He walked away from $1 billion. Not because he was losing. Because he was winning. Marcus Chun stood at the helm of a company valued at more than most nations. His board thought he had lost his mind. His investors threatened lawsuits. His wife asked if he needed to see someone, but Marcus knew something they did not. He could see the cliff ahead. The one everyone else was too busy celebrating to notice. 3 months after his exit, the market collapsed. The company survived, barely, but it never recovered its peak. Those who stayed watched their fortunes evaporate. Marcus had already moved his chips to safer ground. He did not possess a crystal ball. He possessed something rarer. The courage to quit while he was ahead. Now here's the question that should keep you up tonight. What are you holding on to right now that is quietly bleeding you dry? What commitment, what relationship, what career path, what dream have you clutched so tightly that your knuckles have gone white and your soul has gone numb? You call it dedication. You call it perseverance. You tell yourself that winners never quit and quitters never win. But what if that is the most expensive lie you have ever believed? What if the very thing you refuse to release is the anchor dragging you to the bottom of an ocean you were never meant to drown in? What if your loyalty to the wrong path is stealing years from your life, dollars from your bank account, and joy from your days that you will never get back? Consider this. Every single day you spend forcing something that is not working is a day you cannot spend building something that would. Every hour poured into a dying venture is an hour stolen from a living opportunity. Every ounce of energy wasted on resuscitating what should be buried is energy you could have used to create something magnificent. You are not just losing what you are putting in. You are losing everything you could have built instead. This is called opportunity cost, and most people are completely blind to it. They see what they would lose by leaving with perfect clarity. They see the sunk costs, the invested time, the built relationships, the established identity. But they cannot see what they would gain by leaving. They cannot see the doors that would open, the possibilities that would emerge, the better life that would become available. This blindness is not stupidity. It is human nature. We evolved to be loss-averse, to feel losses more acutely than equivalent gains. This made sense in the ancestral environment, where losing what you had could mean death. But in the modern world, it keeps us trapped. It makes us cling to bad situations because leaving feels like loss, even when staying is objectively worse. The strategic quitter has trained themselves to see both sides of the equation. They ask not just what will I lose if I leave, but what am I losing by staying? They calculate the invisible costs. They name the invisible opportunities. They make decisions based on the full picture, not just the parts that are easiest to see. Here's a question to sit with as we continue. What opportunity is dying right now while you pour resources into maintaining something that should have ended? That is the real cost of refusing to quit. Not just what it takes from you, but what it prevents you from receiving. In the next several hours, we are going to dismantle everything you thought you knew about giving up. We are going to expose the toxic mythology of persistence at all costs. We are going to reveal why the most successful people in history were not the ones who never quit, but the ones who quit strategically, repeatedly, and brilliantly. You are going to learn to read the exit signs before you crash. You are going to discover how to untangle your identity from your investments so that walking away does not feel like dying. You are going to master the art of the graceful dismount, the pivot that looks like retreat but is actually repositioning. And by the time we are done, you will possess a superpower that 90% of people will never develop. The ability to quit while you are ahead, not because you are weak, because you are wise, not because you failed, because you refuse to let failure define you, not because you gave up, because you gave yourself permission to move towards something better. Your lighter life is waiting. It is on the other side of everything you have been too afraid to release. And the journey to get there begins right now. Let me ask you something before we go further. What is the commitment you are most afraid to question? What is the thing you have told yourself you could never quit, no matter what? Hold that in your mind as we continue. We will return to it. And by the time we do, you may see it very differently. Let us talk about the most dangerous piece of advice ever given. Never give up. You have heard it 1,000 times. It has been stitched onto pillows, printed on posters, shouted from stages, and whispered by well-meaning parents and coaches, and mentors who genuinely believed they were handing you the keys to success. Never give up. Winners never quit. Quitters never win. Push through. Dig deeper. Try harder. Stay the course. This advice has launched 1 million motivational speeches. It has sold $1 billion worth of self-help books. It has become so deeply embedded in our cultural consciousness that questioning it feels almost heretical. But here is what nobody tells you. This advice has also destroyed countless lives. It has kept people trapped in careers that were slowly killing their spirits. It has chained entrepreneurs to failing businesses until bankruptcy consumed everything they had built. It has locked people into relationships that drained their humanity drop by drop. It has convinced talented individuals to keep pouring resources into projects that had zero chance of succeeding. The mythology of never giving up is not just incomplete. It is actively dangerous, because persistence only makes sense when you are persisting in the right direction. Grit only serves you when it is applied to something worth grinding for. Determination only helps when what you are determined to achieve is actually achievable and actually aligned with who you want to become. Blind persistence is not courage. It is stubbornness wearing a hero costume. Think about it this way. If you were driving toward a beautiful destination and you realized you had taken a wrong turn, would you keep driving in the wrong direction just because someone once told you to never give up? Would you floor the accelerator into the abyss just to prove you are not a quitter? Of course not. That would be insane, and yet that is exactly what millions of people do with their lives every single day. They realize they are heading in the wrong direction, but they keep going because admitting the need to turn around feels like failure. Here is a truth that might sting a little. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stop. Sometimes the strongest move is to walk away. Sometimes the path to victory runs directly through surrender. The greatest generals in history understood this. They knew that winning wars was not about never retreating. It was about knowing when to advance and when to pull back, when to fight and when to regroup. A commander who never retreated would eventually lose everything. A commander who knew when to strategically withdraw lived to fight another day, in better conditions, with better odds. The same principle applies to your life. You are the commander of your own existence. You have limited resources, limited time, limited energy, limited attention, limited years on this planet. How you deploy those resources determines the quality of your life and the scope of your impact. If you insist on never quitting anything, you are essentially saying that your first choices were always your best choices. You are claiming that nothing you ever committed to could possibly be improved upon, that no better opportunities could ever emerge, that you have nothing to learn from experience about what is worth your precious time and what is not. That is not strength. That is ego refusing to accept feedback from reality. The truth is that you cannot say yes to everything that matters without saying no to some things that do not. You cannot run toward your best life while simultaneously refusing to walk away from your worst decisions. You cannot embrace the new without releasing the old. Strategic quitting is not the opposite of success. It is often the precondition for it. Consider the entrepreneur who tried 3 businesses before finding the one that made them wealthy. Each quit was not a failure. It was a course correction. It was data gathering. It was the process of elimination that eventually led to the winning formula. Consider the writer who abandoned a dozen half-finished novels before completing the one that changed literature. Those abandoned manuscripts were not wasted effort. They were necessary steps in the development of skill and vision. Consider the professional who left a stable but soul-crushing job to pursue work that actually mattered to them. That quit was not giving up on success. It was giving up on someone else's definition of success so they could build their own. The question is not whether you should ever quit. You should. You must. The question is how to know when quitting serves you and when it sabotages you. That distinction makes all the difference. Toxic persistence is when you keep going because you are afraid to stop, because you cannot bear the thought of admitting that something is not working, because your ego is too invested to accept reality. Strategic commitment is when you keep going because the goal still matters. The path is still viable, and you are making genuine progress even if it is slower than you hoped. The difference between these two is not always obvious from the outside. Two people can engage in identical behaviors. The difference is internal. It is about why you are staying, not just that you are staying. Are you staying because you genuinely believe in the destination and the path? Or are you staying because you are terrified of what it would mean about you if you left? Are you persisting because the evidence suggests persistence is warranted? Or are you persisting because you have already invested so much that you cannot stomach the thought of that investment being wasted? Are you pushing through because you can see light at the end of the tunnel? Or are you pushing through because you have convinced yourself that pushing through is what good people do, regardless of whether there is any light at all? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are necessary ones. Because if you cannot tell the difference between strategic commitment and toxic persistence in your own life, you are flying blind. You are making the most important decisions about your time and energy and years without any real framework for evaluating whether those decisions are serving you or destroying you. Here is a simple litmus test you can apply right now to any commitment you are questioning. Ask yourself 3 questions. First, if I were not already in this, would I choose to enter it today knowing what I now know? Second, am I staying because I want to or because I am afraid to leave? Third, in 5 years, will I be glad I stayed or will I wish I had left? Be brutally honest with your answers. Do not tell yourself what you think you should feel. Notice what you actually feel. If the answers suggest you should leave but you are not leaving, you have encountered the gap between knowledge and action. You know what is right, but you cannot bring yourself to do it. That gap is where most lives get stuck. That gap is where dreams go to die slowly. The purpose of this audiobook is to close that gap. To give you not just the knowledge that you should quit, but the understanding and tools to actually do it. And that brings us to one of the most powerful and destructive forces in human psychology. A force that keeps millions of people trapped in situations they should have left years ago. A force that feels like wisdom, but functions like quicksand. The sunk cost fallacy. You have probably heard this term before. But hearing about it and actually escaping its grip are two very different things. The sunk cost fallacy is the tendency to continue investing in something because of what you have already invested, rather than based on what you are likely to get back. It is the voice in your head that says you cannot quit now because you have already put so much in. It is the logic that convinces you to stay in a bad situation because leaving would mean admitting that everything you already sacrificed was wasted. Here is the brutal truth about sunk costs. They are gone. Whatever you have already invested, whether it is time or money or energy or emotion or identity, is already spent. You cannot get it back. It exists only in the past. It has no bearing whatsoever on whether continuing to invest is a good decision. And yet we act as if sunk costs matter enormously. We treat them as chains binding us to our previous choices, as if honoring our past investments requires us to keep investing even when the returns have become negative. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Imagine you bought a ticket to a concert. You paid $200 for that ticket months ago. Now the night of the concert has arrived, and you are exhausted. You are getting sick. The weather is terrible. You really do not want to go, but you go anyway. Because you already paid $200. And if you do not go, that money is wasted. Here is what is actually happening in that scenario. The $200 is already gone. It is spent whether you go to the concert or not. The only question that matters is whether going to the concert will make your evening better, or worse than staying home. If going means dragging your sick, exhausted body through terrible weather to sit through a show you will not enjoy, then going makes your life worse. Staying home makes your life better. The $200 is completely irrelevant to that calculation because the $200 is already gone regardless of what you decide. And yet the sunk cost fallacy convinces millions of people every day to make choices that actively harm them, just to avoid feeling like their past investments were wasted. Now scale that up. Scale it up from a $200 concert ticket to a career, to a business, to a marriage, to a decade of your life. The sunk cost fallacy does not just convince you to attend concerts you should skip. It convinces you to stay in jobs that are crushing your spirit because you have already invested 10 years. It convinces you to keep funding businesses that are obviously failing because you have already poured in your savings. It convinces you to remain in relationships that have long since stopped serving either person because you have already built a life together. The more you have invested, the stronger the pull to keep investing. And that is exactly backward from how rational decision-making should work. Let me introduce you to a concept I call ghost rent. Ghost rent is what you pay to maintain commitments that no longer serve you. It is the ongoing cost, in time, energy, money, and opportunity, of staying in situations you should have left. Think of it like an apartment you moved out of years ago. You no longer live there. You no longer get any benefit from it. But somehow, mysteriously, you keep paying the rent every month. That would be insane for a physical apartment. And yet that is exactly what we do with psychological and professional and relational commitments all the time. We keep paying ghost rent on dead dreams, on expired relationships, on careers that stopped fitting us years ago, on projects that will never work, on versions of ourselves we have outgrown. And here is the truly tragic part. Ghost rent is not just expensive. It is invisible. You do not get a bill at the end of the month itemizing how much you paid to maintain your commitment to that failing business. You do not see a clear statement showing the opportunity cost of staying in that job you hate. The costs are real, but they are hidden, spread across your days in the form of stress you have normalized, energy you no longer notice leaking away, opportunities you never even see because you are too busy maintaining something that should have ended long ago. So what exactly are you paying ghost rent on right now? What debt investments are still drawing from your account? What expired commitments are still consuming your resources? What ghost tenants are still occupying space in your life? Space that could be filled with something alive, something growing, something worthy of your precious and limited time? This is not a rhetorical question. I want you to actually think about it. Maybe it is a job that stopped challenging you years ago but feels too comfortable to leave. Maybe it is a business that the evidence clearly shows is not working, but you cannot bear to close. Maybe it is a relationship that has become more duty than joy. Maybe it is a goal you set 10 years ago that no longer fits the person you have become. Maybe it is a grudge you are still carrying, an anger you are still feeding, a wound you are still picking at instead of letting heal. Whatever it is costing you. Every single day, it is costing you. And the longer you wait to address it, the more expensive that cost becomes. Now let us talk about a related concept that might be even more important. Opportunity cost blindness. Sunk costs are about looking backward, about being chained to what you have already invested. Opportunity costs are about looking forward, about what you are giving up by maintaining your current course. Every commitment you make has two costs. There's the direct cost, what you put in, and there is the opportunity cost, what you could have done instead with those same resources. When you spend an hour working on a project, the direct cost is 1 hour of your time and energy. The opportunity cost is everything else you could have done with that hour. When you spend $1,000 on something, the direct cost is $1,000. The opportunity cost is everything else that money could have bought or invested in or created. Here is why this matters so much for strategic quitting. Most people are acutely aware of the direct costs of quitting. They can see exactly what they would be walking away from. They can calculate the sunk costs they would be abandoning. They can feel the sting of admitting that something did not work, but most people are almost completely blind to the opportunity costs of staying. When you stay in a job that is wrong for you, you see what you would lose by leaving. The salary, the stability, the seniority, the identity. But you do not see what you would gain. You do not see the better job you could find, the business you could build, the life you could create. Those opportunities are invisible because they exist only in the realm of possibility. And we tend to discount what we cannot see. When you stay in a failing business, you see what you would lose by closing it, the investment, the dream, the potential that might somehow still be realized. But you do not see the next venture, the one that would actually succeed. The one you are preventing yourself from starting because all your resources are tied up in resuscitating something that should be buried. When you stay in a relationship that is not working, you see the history you would lose, the comfort you would give up, the pain of disentangling your lives. But you do not see the relationship you could have, the partnership that would actually fulfill you, the person you could become if you were not constantly diminished by staying in the wrong place. Opportunity. The problem is that we are biologically and psychologically wired to ignore these signals. Our brains hate uncertainty. They crave completion. They are programmed to finish what we start, to stick with what is familiar, to rationalize staying even when the evidence screams that we should leave. Evolution designed us to conserve energy by maintaining the status quo, and in the modern world, that often means staying in situations that actively harm us. Beyond biology, we face social pressure. Our culture rewards persistence and punishes quitting. We admire people who stick it out and look down on those who walk away. This social programming runs deep, and it makes us deaf to the exit signals that could save us. So what are these signals? How do you recognize when it is time to go? The first exit signal is the energy audit. Pay attention to how you feel before, during, and after engaging with the commitment in question. Does it energize you or drain you? Does it leave you feeling alive or depleted? Not every worthwhile endeavor is fun, and hard things often feel hard. But there is a difference between the productive difficulty of growing and the destructive difficulty of being ground down. When something is right for you, even when it is challenging, there's a quality of aliveness to the struggle. You feel stretched but not broken. You feel tired but not empty. The difficulty serves your development. When something is wrong for you, the difficulty just hurts. You feel drained in a way that does not regenerate. You feel diminished rather than expanded. The effort takes from you without giving anything back. Track your energy honestly. Keep a journal if you need to. Notice patterns over weeks and months. The truth of your situation will reveal itself in the cumulative data of how engaging with it makes you feel. The second exit signal is the evidence of progress. When you are on the right path, you can see forward motion, even if it is slow. You can point to things that have improved, skills that have developed, milestones that have been reached. When you are on the wrong path, progress stalls or becomes illusory. You find yourself running in place, working harder just to stay even, achieving nothing except the continuation of the effort itself. Ask yourself honestly what has actually changed for the better in the last 6 months, in the last year, in the last 3 years. If you have been putting in significant effort and you cannot point to significant progress, that is an exit signal. This does not mean you should quit anything that is not immediately succeeding. Big goals take time. Complex projects have long runways. Some seeds take years to sprout. But even in slow developing situations, there should be some evidence of life. Some shoots breaking through the soil. Some indication that the investment is generating returns. Even if those returns are not yet fully realized, consider the difference between a garden that is growing slowly and a garden where nothing is growing at all. In the first case, there are signs of life. Small green shoots. Subtle changes. Evidence that something is happening beneath the surface. In the second case, there is nothing. Just dirt. Just effort without result. Your commitments work the same way. Slow progress is still progress. No progress is a signal that something is fundamentally wrong. How do you tell the difference? Look for leading indicators. In a business, these might be increasing engagement even if revenue has not caught up yet. In a career, these might be growing skills and relationships even if the promotion has not materialized. In a relationship, these might be deepening understanding and connection even if the concrete circumstances have not changed. If you cannot find any leading indicators of progress, if there is no evidence that your investment is producing anything, that is a powerful exit signal. The question you should be asking is not whether you should quit, but why you have not quit already. If you see nothing, if years go by and the only thing you can point to is the effort itself, that is data you cannot afford to ignore. The third exit signal is alignment with identity. Are you becoming more yourself through this commitment, or are you becoming someone you do not recognize? The right commitments develop you. They stretch you in directions you want to grow. They call forth capacities you want to develop. Even when they are difficult, they are making you more of who you want to be. The wrong commitments diminish you. They require you to compromise parts of yourself that should not be compromised. They shape you in directions you do not want to go. They turn you into someone you would not have chosen to become. Take a moment right now and ask yourself about your most significant commitments. The job, the relationship, the business, the goal. Are these making you more yourself or less yourself? Are they developing your best qualities or suppressing them? Are they building the person you want to become or constructing someone you barely recognize? This assessment requires honesty that can be painful. It is easier to tell yourself that all growth is uncomfortable and that you should push through. And sometimes that is true. But there is a difference between the discomfort of expansion and the discomfort of constriction. One feels like stretching. The other feels like being squeezed. You know the difference. You feel it in your body. You sense it in your spirit. The question is whether you are willing to admit what you know. This can be subtle. It often happens gradually, so slowly that you do not notice the transformation until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. Pay attention to who you are becoming. If your commitment is making you smaller, harder, more cynical, more desperate, more disconnected from your values, that is an exit signal. The fourth exit signal is the feedback from your body. Your body often knows the truth before your mind is willing to admit it. Chronic stress, persistent anxiety, depression, physical symptoms without clear medical causes, disrupted sleep, appetite changes, immune problems. All of these can be your body trying to tell you something your conscious mind is working very hard to ignore. We live in a culture that teaches us to override our bodies, to push through, to ignore the signals, and keep grinding. But your body is not your enemy. It is often your wisest advisor. When it starts breaking down, when it sends distress signals that persist despite your attempts to silence them, it is trying to tell you that something needs to change. Listen to your body. It might be telling you that the cost of staying has become too high. There is a phrase that captures this phenomenon perfectly. The body keeps the score. Your conscious mind can rationalize anything. It can construct elaborate justifications for staying in situations that are objectively harmful. But your body does not lie. Your body keeps a running tally of the cost, and eventually, it presents the bill whether you are ready to pay it or not. The heart attack, the autoimmune flare, the breakdown, the burnout. These are not random misfortunes. They are often the body's final attempt to communicate what the mind has. Refuse to hear. Pay attention before it comes to that. Your body is giving you early signals right now. The question is whether you are listening. The fifth exit signal is the opinion of people you trust. Sometimes we are too close to our own situations to see them clearly. We need outside perspectives from people who know us well, who have our best interests at heart, and who are not invested in maintaining our illusions. When multiple people you trust, not just one person who might have their own agenda, are expressing concern about a situation you are in, that is data worth considering. They can often see what we cannot. They can often name what we are too afraid to admit. This does not mean you should quit everything that someone else thinks you should quit. You know your situation better than anyone. But if the people who love you, who have watched you change, who have seen what this commitment is doing to you, are consistently raising concerns, take that seriously. Now let me tell you about someone who learned to read exit signals the hard way. Jennifer Park had spent 12 years building her marketing agency. She had started it in her spare bedroom, grown it to 40 employees, and made it into one of the most respected firms in her region. She was living the entrepreneurial dream, or so everyone thought. Inside, Jennifer was dying. The company that had once been her passion had become her prison. The clients who had once excited her now filled her with dread. The creative work she had loved had been replaced by endless management headaches. Every morning she woke up with a knot in her stomach that did not go away until she fell asleep, but she could not quit. She had too much invested, too many people depending on her, too much of her identity wrapped up in being the founder and CEO of this company she had built. So she kept going. She kept pushing. She told herself it would get better. She told herself she just needed to work harder, hire better, systemize more. She took courses on leadership. She hired coaches. She restructured and reorganized and reimagined. Nothing worked. Or rather, the business kept working. It kept growing. It kept making money. But Jennifer kept dying inside. It was not until she ended up in the hospital with what she thought was a heart attack that she finally paid attention. Sitting in that hospital bed, hooked up to monitors, waiting for test results that turned out to show she was physically fine. Just horrifically stressed, Jennifer had a conversation with herself that changed everything. What am I doing? Why am I destroying myself for this? Who told me I had to keep going until I literally collapse? What would happen if I just stopped? The voice in her head that had been keeping her trapped, the voice that said she could not quit, that winners do not give up, that she had too much invested to walk away, that voice was suddenly quiet. And in the silence, she heard something else. Her own exhaustion, her own desperation, her own small, scared truth. I do not want this anymore. 6 months later, Jennifer sold her agency. She took a year off, which was terrifying for someone who had defined herself by her work since she was 22. She thought she would feel lost. Instead, she felt free. Today, Jennifer runs a much smaller consulting practice. She works with clients she chooses on projects that interest her. She makes less money than she used to. She also sleeps through the night for the first time in a decade. She laughs more. She feels more like herself than she has since she started the agency 12 years ago. I waited way too long, she says when she tells this story. All the signals were there. My body was screaming at me. My family was worried about me. I was miserable every single day. But I was so committed to the idea that I could not quit that I almost killed myself proving it. The thing I know now is that quitting was not failure. Quitting was the smartest business decision I ever made. It just was not a business decision. It was a life decision. Jennifer's story illustrates something crucial about exit signals. They are almost always present long before we are willing to see them. The warning signs, the red flags, the body's protests, the feedback from loved ones, all of it is there. The question is not whether the signals exist. The question is whether we are brave enough to read them. But even when we can see the signals clearly, even when we know intellectually that we should quit, there is still something that keeps us stuck. Something deeper than logic. Something that makes walking away feel not just difficult but impossible. That something is identity. This is perhaps the most important chapter in our entire journey together. Because until you understand how your sense of self gets tangled up with your commitments, you will never be truly free to quit when you should. Here is what happens psychologically when you commit to something significant. At first, you have a goal and you are pursuing it. The goal is outside you. You are here, the goal is there, and there is clear separation between who you are and what you are doing. But over time, especially if you are investing heavily, the boundary blurs. The goal becomes part of your identity. You are no longer someone who is building a business. You become a business owner. You are no longer someone who is working on becoming a doctor. You become a pre-med student. You are no longer someone who is trying to make a relationship work. You become a married person. This identity fusion is not inherently bad. In many ways, it is necessary for sustained commitment. We need to feel that our goals are part of who we are in order to summon the motivation to keep pursuing them through difficulty. But here is the trap. Once your identity becomes fused with your commitment, quitting is no longer just abandoning a goal. It is abandoning yourself. Walking away is no longer just admitting that something is not working. It is admitting that you are not who you thought you were. And that is why quitting feels so terrifying even when it is obviously the right thing to do. When someone says they cannot quit their job even though it is making them miserable, they are often speaking a literal psychological truth. They cannot quit the job without quitting the identity of being a person with that job. And since they cannot imagine themselves without that identity, they genuinely cannot imagine quitting. When someone says they cannot leave a relationship even though it is clearly toxic, they are often telling you that their sense of self has become so intertwined with being in that relationship that leaving feels like annihilation. It is not just the partner they would be losing. It is themselves. When someone says they cannot walk away from a business or a career or a dream, even though all the evidence says they should, they are often revealing that they no longer know who they would be without that thing. The commitment has become load-bearing for their entire identity structure. This is the identity trap. And it keeps people stuck in destructive situations for years, sometimes for lifetimes. So how do you escape it? How do you untangle who you are from what you do so that you can make clear-eyed decisions about what to quit and what to pursue? The first step is to recognize that you are not your commitments. This sounds obvious when stated directly. Of course you are not your job. Of course you are not your business. Of course you are not your relationship. These are things you do, roles you play, choices you make. They are not your fundamental essence. But while this is obvious intellectually, it is not how most of us actually live. Most of us have deeply confused who we are with what we do. Most of us would struggle to articulate who we would be if everything we currently do was taken away. Try this thought experiment. Imagine that tomorrow, through no fault of your own, every external role and commitment you currently have is removed. Your job is gone. Your business is gone. Your relationships are gone. Your projects are gone. Everything you do is stripped away. What remains? If your answer is nothing, if you genuinely cannot imagine a self that exists independently of your current activities, then your identity is dangerously fused with your commitments. You are one external change away from a full-scale identity crisis. But if you can find something, some core sense of who you are that persists regardless of what you are doing, then you have something to build on. You have ground to stand on when you need to walk away from something that is not working. This core self is not about what you do. It is about how you do it. It is about your values, your character, your way of being in the world. It is about the qualities you bring to whatever you engage with, not the specific things you engage with. Are you kind? That is true whether you are a CEO or unemployed. Are you creative? That is true whether your business succeeds or fails. Are you loyal? That is true whether your relationship lasts or ends. The second step is to practice dying small deaths. One reason we resist quitting big things is that we have no practice quitting small things. We have convinced ourselves that every commitment must be honored, that walking away from anything is a character flaw, that persistence is always a virtue. This is not just philosophically wrong. It is practically harmful. It means we have no skills for letting go. When we finally face a situation that truly requires us to quit, we have no muscle memory, no experience, no competence. So start small. Practice quitting things that do not matter much. Let go of obligations that no longer serve you. Stop attending events you do not enjoy out of pure habit. Release relationships that have run their course. Abandon projects that are not working before they become catastrophes. Each small quit is training for the big ones. Each time you walk away from something that is not working, you build the muscle of release. You prove to yourself that you can survive letting go. You learn that walking away is not the same as falling apart. The third step is to separate the lesson from the loss. When you quit something, you do not just lose what you were getting from it. You also gain something. You gain the lesson. You gain the wisdom. You gain the experience that will serve you in whatever comes next. One of the reasons identity gets so fused with commitments is that we treat our investments as binary. Either we get the outcome we wanted, in which case the investment paid off, or we do not get the outcome, in which case the investment was wasted. But this is not how reality works. The value of an investment is not just in its ultimate outcome. It is in everything you gained along the way. The skills you developed, the people you met, the things you learned about yourself and the world. When you can see your commitments as learning experiences rather than pass-fail tests, it becomes much easier to walk away from ones that are not working. You are not abandoning a failed investment. You are graduating from a completed course of study. What did you learn from the job that is not working? That is yours to keep, even after you quit. What did you discover in the relationship that is ending? That wisdom goes with you. What did the failing business teach you about yourself, about markets, about what you really want? Those lessons are permanent acquisitions that no quit can take away. The fourth step is to remember that identity is always evolving. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago. You will not be the same person 10 years from now. Your identity is not a fixed thing to be protected. It is a fluid thing to be developed. When you resist quitting because it would mean changing who you are treating your current identity as sacred. As if the person you happen to be right now, shaped by the commitments you happen to have right now, is the ultimate and final version of you. But that version is just a snapshot. One frame in a very long movie. There are future versions of you that cannot exist unless the current version is willing to. Change. The person you could become if you quit the wrong job might be far better than the person you are while staying in it. The person you could evolve into if you ended the toxic relationship might be far healthier than the person being slowly damaged by remaining. The person you could grow into if you let go of the failing And then, halfway through his second year, David realized something that threatened to destroy him. He hated it, not the challenge. He could handle challenge, not the workload. He had always been a hard worker. He hated the actual practice of medicine. He hated the hospital environment. He hated the patient interactions. He hated the culture. He hated who he was becoming in that world. Every morning he woke up with a feeling of dread that he could not rationalize away. Every evening he came home exhausted in a way that sleep never fixed. He started having panic attacks. He started questioning not just his career, but his entire existence. But he could not quit. He was David Chun, the kid who had always wanted to be a doctor. He had told everyone. He had built everything around this. His parents had sacrificed for this. His grandparents bragged about this. His whole identity was this. Who would he be if he quit? The crisis came to a head one night in the call room when David found himself genuinely thinking about walking into traffic. Not as a plan, just as a thought. Just a fleeting what if. That thought scared him enough to seek help. In therapy, David slowly began the work of untangling his identity from his commitment. He began to see that he was not actually doctor. He was a person who had wanted to be a doctor. Those are two very different things. He began to explore what it was about medicine that had originally attracted him. The desire to help people. The fascination with how systems work. The appeal of solving complex problems. None of these required an MD. He began to imagine other possible selves. Other lives he could lead that would honor his core values without requiring him to stay in a situation that was destroying him. 6 months later, David left medical school. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Telling his parents, telling his grandparents, telling all the people who had seen his identity as doctor and could not understand why he would walk away from it, but it was also the most liberating thing he had ever done. Today, David works in healthcare technology. He helps build systems that make doctors more effective and patients better served. He uses his medical training every day, but he does not hate his life anymore. He sleeps well. He looks forward to his work. He has room in his life for relationships and hobbies and all the things that had disappeared when he was trying to be someone he was not. I did not quit being David, he says now. I quit being the wrong version of David, the version everyone expected. The version I had constructed when I was 8 years old and did not know any better. The version that was killing me. Quitting medical school did not take away my identity. It gave me the chance to find a better one. The lesson from David's story is profound. Your identity is not fixed at the moment you make a commitment. It evolves. And sometimes it evolves in a direction that makes your original commitment no longer fit. When that happens, you have two choices. You can force yourself to fit into an identity that no longer serves you, slowly crushing your actual self to maintain the appearance of the self you used to be. Or you can let go of the old identity and allow your true self to emerge. The first choice feels safe, but is actually devastating. The second choice feels terrifying, but is actually liberating. Most people choose the first. They spend their lives in jobs that stopped fitting them years ago, relationships that no longer nurture them, goals that no longer inspire them. They do this because the alternative, admitting that they have changed and need to change their external circumstances to match, feels like death. But it is not death. It is birth. It is the birth of who you are actually becoming, finally free from the constraints of who you thought you had to be. David's story illustrates the heart of identity untangling. The recognition that who you are is not what you do. That your core self persists through changes in your external commitments. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go of who everyone expects you to be, so you can become who you are actually meant to be. But identity untangling is only part of the equation. Even when you have freed yourself from the psychological chains that make quitting feel impossible, You still need to know how to actually do it. How to quit in a way that serves your future rather than sabotaging it. This is the art of the viva, strategic pivot. There's a crucial distinction that most people miss. There is a difference between quitting on something and quitting for something. When you quit on something, you are running away. You are fleeing from pain, escaping from difficulty, giving up because you cannot take it anymore. This kind of quitting is reactive. It is desperate. It often leaves you worse off than you were before because you have no destination, only a departure. When you quit for something, you are running toward. You are making room for something better, creating space for something new, strategically repositioning yourself for a future you have clearly envisioned. This kind of quitting is proactive. It is calculated. It leaves you better off because you know exactly what you are moving toward. The difference in outcome between these two types of quitting is enormous. Quitting on something often leads to regret, instability, and a repetition of the same patterns. Quitting for something often leads to growth, improvement, and a genuine upgrade in life circumstances. So how do you make sure your quit is the second type rather than the first? It starts with clarity about what you are quitting for. Before you walk away from anything significant, you should be able to articulate what you are walking toward. Not in vague terms like something better or a new chapter, but in specific terms. What exactly are you creating space for? What exactly will you do with the resources you free up? What exactly does success look like on the other side of this quit? This does not mean you need a perfect plan. The future is uncertain, and some of the best opportunities come unexpectedly. But you should have a direction. You should know the general territory you are heading into, even if you do not have a street address. When someone quits a job without any idea of what they want to do next, that is quitting on something. They are escaping their current situation, but not moving toward anything specific. This often leads to jumping into the next available option, which frequently turns out to be no better than what they left. When someone quits a job because they have identified a specific opportunity they want to pursue, a business they want to start, a field they want to enter, a role they want to grow into, that is quitting for something. They have a target. They have direction. They have a standard against which to measure their next choices. The second element of a strategic pivot is timing. Here's one of the most counterintuitive truths about quitting. The best time to quit is usually when you are ahead, not when you are desperate. Most people wait too long to quit. They wait until they are burned out, broken down, financially devastated, or emotionally destroyed. They quit at the worst possible moment, when they have the fewest resources, the least clarity, and the most desperation. Quitting from desperation is almost always quitting on something. You are not walking toward a better future. You are crawling away from an unbearable present. You have no leverage, no options, and no margin for error. Quitting while you are ahead is completely different. When you quit from a position of strength, you have resources. You have time to plan. You have options to evaluate. You have the luxury of choosing your next move rather than grabbing whatever lifeline appears. This is what Marcus Chen understood at the beginning of our story. He did not quit his company because it was failing. He quit because he could see that the conditions for success were about to change. He quit while he still had leverage, while his equity was still valuable, while he still had the reputation and resources to build whatever came next. The same principle applies at every scale. Quit the job while you are still a valued employee, not after you have been pushed out. End the relationship while there is still mutual respect, not after years of accumulated resentment have poisoned everything. Close the business while you still have resources to deploy elsewhere, not after bankruptcy has consumed everything. This requires courage, because it means walking away from something that is still working, at least on the surface. It requires the ability to see beyond current circumstances to future probabilities. It requires trusting your read of the exit signals, even when everything still looks fine to everyone else. But the payoff is enormous. Strategic quitters exit on their own terms. They preserve relationships, reputations, and resources that desperate quitters sacrifice. They set themselves up for success in their next chapter rather than just surviving their current one. The third element is the transition plan. Between where you are and where you want to be, there is a gap. The transition plan is how you cross that gap without falling into it. Good transition plans have several key elements. First, they maintain stability during change. This might mean saving money before quitting a job, so you have runway. It might mean gradually reducing involvement in a business before selling it, so you are not indispensable. It might mean creating support systems before ending a relationship, so you do not crash into isolation. Second, they bridge to the new. The best transitions are not clean breaks, but gradual shifts. You start building toward your next chapter while you are still in your current one. You develop skills, make connections, and create options before you actually need them. By the time you officially. People who tell themselves failure stories move forward tentatively, expecting the next thing to fail too. People who tell themselves learning stories move forward curiously, eager to apply what they discovered. People who tell themselves evolution stories move forward confidently, trusting that they are on a trajectory of growth. Which kind of story do you want to tell? Which kind of person do you want to become? When you tell the story of your quit, you want to be honest about what was not working. Pretending everything was fine and you just happened to leave is not credible and does not serve anyone. But you also want to be clear about what you are moving toward, what you learned, and how this change serves your larger life trajectory. The narrative is not just for others. It is for you. How you frame this quit to yourself will determine how you carry it forward. A quit that you think of as failure will weigh on you differently than a quit that you think of as wisdom. The facts might be the same, but the meaning you make of them will shape your future. Let me tell you about a quit that was done almost perfectly. Sarah Mitchell had built a successful career in corporate finance. 20 years climbing the ladder. Executive positions at major firms. A 7-figure compensation package. By any external measure, she had made it. But Sarah had a secret dream. She wanted to teach. Not at a university. Not part-time or on the side. She wanted to teach high school math to students who were struggling in underserved communities, where she could make a direct impact on young lives. This dream was completely incompatible with her current life. You cannot be a finance executive and a high school teacher. The time does not work. The identity does not work. The economics do not work. Something would have to give. For years, Sarah put the dream aside. She told herself she would do it someday. After she had made enough money. After she had achieved enough. After she had proven herself in the world she was in. But someday never came. And as she got older, as she watched colleagues retire into comfortable but meaningless lives, she started to feel the weight of a dream deferred. The exit signals were clear if she was honest with herself. She was good at her job but no longer interested in it. She had stopped growing and was just maintaining. The work that used to excite her now felt like going through the motions. She could do it for another 15 years and retire wealthy. But something in her was already dead. Sarah decided to quit. But she did it strategically. First, she got clear on what she was quitting for. Not just away from finance, but toward teaching. She researched alternative certification programs. She volunteered at local schools. She made sure this dream held up to contact with reality before she bet her career on it. Second, she timed it well. She quit after a particularly successful year, when her reputation was at its peak and her options were maximal. She quit before the burnout she could feel creeping in had a chance to damage her health or her relationships. She quit while she was ahead. Third, she built a transition plan. She saved aggressively for 2 years before leaving. building a financial cushion that would let her survive on a teacher's salary. She started taking evening classes in education while still working her finance job. She networked with educators. She laid groundwork. Fourth, she crafted a narrative. When she announced her departure, she did not frame it as burnout or failure. She framed it as what it actually was: the deliberate pursuit of a dream she had carried her whole life. A choice to spend her remaining working years doing something that would give her life meaning beyond money. The response was surprising to her. Instead of judgment, she received admiration. Colleagues told her they wished they had the courage to do what she was doing. Friends said she was inspiring them to take their own dreams seriously. 3 years later, Sarah teaches algebra and geometry at a high school in a working-class neighborhood. She makes a fraction of what she used to make. She works harder than she did in finance in different ways. And she has never been happier. What made it work, she says, was doing it right. Not running away, but running toward. Not escaping a problem, but pursuing a possibility. Not quitting in desperation, but quitting in aspiration. The quit was not the end of something. It was the beginning of something I had been postponing my whole life. Sarah's story shows what strategic quitting looks like in practice. Clarity about the destination. Timing that preserved options. A transition that bridged the gap. A narrative that honored both what she was leaving and where she was headed. There's one more element to Sarah's story that deserves attention. She did not burn any bridges. This is crucial and often overlooked. How you leave matters as much as whether you leave. When you quit in anger, when you quit by burning bridges, when you quit in a way that damages relationships and reputation, you limit your future options. The world is smaller than you think. The people you alienate today might be the people you need tomorrow. The reputation you damage might follow you into your next chapter. Strategic quitting is graceful. It acknowledges what was good. It thanks people who helped. It completes obligations to the extent possible. It leaves doors open that might be worth walking through again someday. This does not mean being inauthentic. You do not have to pretend that everything was wonderful when it was not. But you can be honest about the reasons for leaving without being destructive. You can advocate for yourself without attacking others. You can move on without scorching the earth behind you. Sarah left her finance career with her relationships intact. Her former colleagues respected her choice, even if they did not fully understand it. She could have gone back if she wanted to. She never wanted to, but the option was there. That is the mark of a graceful exit. This is the art of the strategic pivot. Not quitting as failure, but quitting as repositioning. Not retreat, but redirection. Not giving up, but leveling up. Now, let us talk about one of the hardest parts of quitting that almost nobody prepares for: the grief. Even when you quit something that needed to end. Even when you quit something toxic. Even when you quit something that was clearly killing you, there is loss. And loss requires mourning. This catches people off guard. They expect to feel relief when they finally walk away. They expect to feel freedom, lightness, joy. And sometimes those feelings come. But often, right alongside them, comes grief. Grief for the investment that will not be returned. Grief for the version of yourself that will not exist. Grief for the future you had imagined that will now never happen. Grief for the relationships that will not survive the change. Grief for the simple familiarity of what you are leaving behind. This grief is legitimate. It is not a sign that you made the wrong choice. It is a sign that what you are leaving mattered. The problem is that we often do not know how to hold grief and rightness at the same time. We think that if we are sad about something, we should not have done it. We think that grief is evidence that we made a mistake, but that is not how grief works. Grief is the price of attachment. Anything you were attached to, you will grieve when you leave. And if you could not attach to anything for fear of the grief that would come from leaving, you would live a very cold and very small life. So how do you process the grief of strategic quitting without letting it derail you? The first thing is simply to expect it. Know in advance that you will feel loss. Know that there will be days when you question your choice. Know that some part of you will mourn even as another part celebrates. When the grief comes, it will not catch you by surprise. You will recognize it for what it is. A normal part of the process. A sign of health, not pathology. Evidence that you are human, not a robot. The second thing is to give the grief its due. Do not try to rationalize it away. Do not try to skip over it to the good feelings you think you should be having. Let yourself feel what you feel. This might mean literal mourning rituals. Writing a letter to the version of yourself who believed in what you are leaving. Having a ceremonial last day. Creating a symbolic gesture of release. Different people need different things, but everyone needs something. The third thing is to not let the grief make decisions for you. This is crucial. Grief will try to convince you that you made a mistake. It will whisper that you should go back. It will paint the thing you left in rosy colors and the uncertain future in threatening ones. This is what grief does. It is not rational. It is not forward-looking. It is the voice of attachment pulling you backward. And if you listen to it, if you let it drive your choices, you will end up right back where you started. The way to honor grief without being controlled by it is to feel it fully while still moving forward. You can cry about what you left and still not go back. You can feel the ache of loss and still build something new. You can mourn the past and still embrace the future. These are not contradictions. They are the texture of a rich human life. The fourth thing is to watch for what I call grief reversal. Some people get through the immediate grief of quitting, and then, weeks or months later, when their new situation has its own difficulties, they suddenly rewrite history. They forget why they left. They remember only the good parts of what they left behind. They convince themselves that they made a terrible mistake and that they need to go back. This is almost always an illusion. It is the mind playing tricks under stress. When the new path is hard, the old path suddenly looks easy. That information matters. Your imagination is smarter than you often give it credit for. It can see things that your rational mind resists. It can show you truths you have been hiding from yourself. Let the vision guide you. Let it whisper what you already know. Now let us talk about what happens after you quit. How you channel the resources you have freed into building something better. When you quit something significant, you do not just remove a burden. You reclaim capacity. Time that was being consumed is now available. Energy that was being drained is now yours to direct. Attention that was being captured is now free to focus elsewhere. This reclaimed capacity is valuable. It might be the most valuable thing you have. But it is also fragile. If you do not intentionally deploy it, it will dissipate. It will get absorbed by whatever is most urgent, most demanding, most loudly clamoring for attention. And you will find yourself 6 months after quitting, with no more space in your life than you had before. So the work of quitting is not complete when you walk away. It is complete when you walk towards something worthy of the space you created. How do you identify what that is? Start with what you neglected. When you were consumed by the commitment you quit, what got pushed aside? What relationships did you not have time for? What dreams did you not have energy for? What parts of yourself did you not have space for? These neglected things are often signposts pointing toward what wants to grow in the cleared ground. The hobby you abandoned might become a passion. The friendship you let fade might become a cornerstone. The health practice you could not maintain might become a foundation. Next, consider what the quit taught you. Every commitment, even the failed ones, teaches something. Maybe it taught you what you are good at. Maybe it taught you what you cannot stand. Maybe it taught you something about what you really value, not what you thought you valued. Use that knowledge. Let it inform what you build next. If you quit because the work was meaningless, prioritize meaning in your next venture. If you quit because the culture was toxic, seek out healthy environments. If you quit because you were not growing, commit to situations that stretch you. Then, give yourself permission to experiment. You do not have to have your next thing perfectly figured out before you start moving. You can try things. You can test assumptions. You can fail small and learn before you commit. In fact, this willingness to experiment might be the greatest gift of strategic quitting. When you have proven to yourself that you can walk away from things that are not working, you become less afraid of trying new things. You know that if this next venture does not work, you can quit it too. You are not trapped. You are free to explore. Finally, remember that building takes time. You did not get trapped in your previous situation overnight. It happened gradually, commitment by commitment, investment by investment. The same is true of building something new. It happens gradually. You will not have your dream life the month after you quit. This is where patience becomes crucial. Not the toxic patience of enduring the bad situation, but the healthy patience of letting a good situation develop. The willingness to stay in the discomfort of transition long enough for the next chapter to reveal itself. Some people quit one bad situation only to jump immediately into another bad situation because they cannot tolerate the uncertainty of the gap. Do not be one of those people. The gap is where the transformation happens. The gap is where you get to choose, consciously and deliberately, what comes next. Do not rush through it. Do not fill it with the first available option. Sit in it long enough to make a wise choice about what to build on the other side. The gap is uncomfortable. Your mind will scream at you to fill it. Society will pressure you to have an answer when people ask what you are doing now. The urge to grasp at any available option, just to end the uncertainty, will be strong. Resist it. The gap is where you discover what you actually want as opposed to what you think you should want. The gap is where you learn to trust yourself without external validation. The gap is where the noise quiets enough for you to hear the signal. Some of the best decisions people make come after periods of deliberate uncertainty. After sitting in the gap long enough to get clear. After letting go of what was without immediately grabbing onto what will be. This requires faith. Faith that you are not falling apart. Faith that clarity will come. Faith that the right next thing will emerge if you give it space. This faith is not passive. You are still doing the work, exploring options, having conversations, testing possibilities. But you are doing it from a place of openness rather than desperation. When you quit from desperation, you often just trade one trap for another. When you quit from clarity, you actually move forward. Let me tell you one more story about someone who quit and built something remarkable on the other side. James Walker had been a lawyer for 15 years. Not because he loved the law. Because when he was 22 and did not know what to do with his life, law school seemed like a respectable default. Because his parents were proud of him for being a lawyer. Because by the time he realized he hated it, he was already deep in student debt and could not imagine starting over. So he stayed. For 15 years he stayed. He got good at it in the way you get good at anything you do for long enough, even if you hate it. He made partner. He made money. He made everyone proud except himself. The exit signals were screaming at him for years. The Sunday night dread that started Friday afternoon. The fantasies about accidents that would give him an excuse to stop. The mounting health problems his doctor kept attributing to stress. The distance in his marriage as he withdrew from everything that was not work. But James was trapped by the identity equation. If he quit being a lawyer, who would he be? What would he tell people when they asked what he did? How would he face his father, who had bragged about "my son the lawyer" for years? The breaking point came during a case he was going to win. He was representing a corporation against a family that had been harmed by the corporation's negligence. The law was on the corporation's side. The corporation was going to win. And James was going to make it happen. He looked at the family across the courtroom. A mother, a father, 2 children. Their lives had been damaged by his client's actions. And now, thanks to a technicality, thanks to superior legal resources, thanks to James's skill, they were going to lose their case and get nothing. James won. And something in him broke. "This is not who I want to be," he told his wife that night. "I cannot do this anymore. I know we have the mortgage and the kids' college funds and the lifestyle we are used to. But I am dying inside. And if I die inside, what is the point of any of it?" They talked for hours. About what they could cut back. About what they could live without. About what really mattered. His wife, to her credit, supported him. "I married you, not your job," she said. "Let us figure it out." James quit the partnership. He took a massive pay cut to join a legal aid organization, representing the kind of people he used to crush in court. He spent the next 3 years doing work he actually believed in, relearning why he had thought the law might be noble in the first place. But that was just the transition. The real building came after. James realized that what he actually cared about was not law itself. It was justice. It was fairness. It was making sure that ordinary people had someone in their corner. When powerful institutions tried to hurt them, he started writing about the legal system, about how it failed regular people, about what needed to change. An article became a blog, became a book, became a movement. He started training young lawyers in public interest work. He started consulting with organizations trying to reform the justice system. Today, James makes less money than he did as a corporate partner. He also sleeps through the night. He looks forward to his days. He has a relationship with his children that was impossible when he was drowning in work he hated. He has a sense of purpose that no amount of money could buy. "I quit one version of my life," he says, "so I could build a better one." The quitting was hard. The transition was terrifying. But the building on the other side has been the best thing I have ever done. That is what is possible on the other side of strategic quitting. Not just the absence of what was wrong, but the presence of what is right. Not just escape, but creation. Not just freedom from, but freedom for. Now, let us talk about reframing your past. One of the heaviest burdens that people who need to quit carry is the weight of their previous quits. They think of themselves as quitters in the worst sense. They see a trail of abandoned projects, failed ventures, ended relationships, and they tell themselves a story about it. A story about not having what it takes. About being fundamentally flawed. About being the kind of person who cannot stick with anything. This story is poison. It will keep you trapped forever if you let it. So let us tell a different story. A truer story. What if every previous quit was not a failure but an experiment? What if each abandoned project taught you something essential about what you are actually supposed to be doing? What if each ended relationship showed you something crucial about what you actually need? What if each closed venture gave you data that makes your next venture more likely to succeed? Scientists do not consider experiments that disprove a hypothesis to be failures. They consider them successes. They have learned something. But sometimes the answer is yes. There is something here. It has just been buried under dysfunctional patterns, neglected amid the busyness of life, obscured by habits that no longer serve. In those cases, strategic quitting is about excavation. About clearing away what is dead to reveal what is still alive. Either way, the principle holds. What is not working must end. Whether that means leaving entirely or staying and rebuilding depends on what you find when you dig beneath the dysfunction. The final destination of this journey is not a single quit. It is a lifestyle of ongoing discernment. Strategic quitting is not something you do once. It is something you do continuously. It is a practice, a discipline, A way of being in the world that keeps you aligned with your evolving values and vision. Because here is the thing about life. It changes. You change. The world changes. Something that was perfect for you 5 years ago might be wrong for you today. A commitment that was serving you beautifully might slowly become a prison. If you do not have the practice of ongoing discernment, you will miss these shifts. You will stay too long in things that have stopped serving you. You will accumulate commitments like barnacles until they are dragging you down. You will wake up one day unable to remember how you ended up trapped in a life you did not consciously choose. The alternative is continuous pruning. Like a gardener who is always trimming, always shaping, always removing what is dead to make room for what is alive. This means regular check-ins with yourself. How is this commitment feeling? Is it still serving me? Am I still growing? Am I still aligned with why I started this? This means staying attentive to the exit signals we discussed earlier. The energy audits. The evidence of progress. The alignment with identity. The feedback from your body. The concerns of people who love you. This means maintaining the practice of letting go. Keep your quit muscles strong by exercising them regularly. Release small things often so that releasing big things when necessary does not feel impossible. This means holding all commitments lightly. Not with disengagement or lack of dedication, but with the awareness that nothing is permanent. That every commitment is a choice that can be remade. That you are never truly trapped unless you choose to be. The goal is a life of curated commitments, where everything you are engaged with is there because you consciously chose it, not because you were too afraid to walk away. Where you have pruned away everything dead and kept only what is alive. Where your energy goes to things that matter, not to things you have simply accumulated. This is what it means to live deliberately. This is the lighter life on the other side of strategic quitting. But let me give you something concrete. Something you can use starting today. Here is an exercise I call the dead weight audit. Get a piece of paper or open a document. At the top write the words, everything I am currently committed to, then list them all. Every job, every project, every relationship, every obligation, every goal, every routine, every subscription, every organization, every role you play. Do not filter. Do not judge. Just list. You might be surprised at how many things are on that list. We accumulate commitments the way ships accumulate barnacles. Slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize you are dragging a small city wherever you go. Once you have your list, go through each item and ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this feeding me or bleeding me? Does engaging with this commitment leave me with more energy or less? Does it add to my life or subtract from it? Be honest. Some things that look good on paper are actually draining you dry. Second, am I growing or just maintaining? Is this commitment taking me somewhere, developing me, expanding my capabilities? Or am I just running in place, putting in effort that produces no forward motion? Third, is this aligned with who I am becoming or who I used to be? Does this commitment serve the person you are evolving into? Or does it only make sense for a version of yourself that no longer exists? Mark each commitment honestly. Feeding me or bleeding me? Growing or maintaining? Becoming or was? Then look at everything marked bleeding, maintaining, and was. Those are your candidates for strategic quitting. That is your dead weight. You do not have to quit all of it at once. That would be overwhelming. But you should start somewhere. Pick the clearest case, the one that is most obviously dragging you down, and begin the process of releasing it. Here is another exercise. I call it the pre-mortem quit. This one is more intense, but it is powerful. Imagine that you do not quit the thing you have been considering quitting. Imagine you stay for 5 more years. You persist. You endure. You keep showing up. Now, from that vantage point 5 years in the future, write a letter to your present self. Write about what those 5 years were like, What did staying cost you? What opportunities did you miss? How did it affect your health, your relationships, your sense of self? What do you wish you had known? What do you wish you had done differently? Let yourself really feel it. Do not hold back. Do not rationalize. Just write the honest truth of what staying for 5 more years would actually look like. When you read that letter, you will know what you need to do. Here is a third exercise for those who struggle with the identity piece. I call it identity archaeology. Complete this sentence as many times as you can. If I quit this, I would no longer be a blank. Write down every identity that is tied to the commitment you are considering leaving. I would no longer be a doctor. I would no longer be a business owner. I would no longer be married. I would no longer be a team player. I would no longer be someone who finishes what they start. Look at that list. Really look at it. These are the identity chains holding you in place. These are the selves you are afraid to lose. Now for each one, ask yourself, is this who I actually am? Or is this just a role I have been playing? Is this essential to my being? Or is it just a costume I have been wearing? You might find that some of these identities are genuinely core to who you are. Those are worth preserving, worth finding new ways to express if you leave your current situation. But you might find that others are just labels. Just external descriptions that do not actually capture your essence. Just words other people use to categorize you that you have mistaken for your actual self. The identities that are just labels can be released. You will survive their loss. You might even thrive once they are gone. One more exercise. The grief letter. This is for after you have made the decision to quit, but before you have fully processed it. Write a letter to the version of yourself who believed in what you are leaving. The version who started this job full of hope. The version who launched this business with a dream. The version who entered this relationship with love. The version who set this goal with conviction. Thank that version of yourself. They were doing their best with what they knew. They made a choice that made sense at the time. They invested because they believed in something. Acknowledge what was real. The effort was real. The hope was real. The investment was real. Just because it is ending does not mean it was meaningless. Then, give that version of yourself permission to rest. Tell them that their work is done. That you are taking it from here. That you will carry the lessons forward even as you release the commitment. This might sound strange, but it works. It allows you to honor what was without letting it hold you hostage to what is. It creates closure that pure rationality cannot provide. Let me tell you about one more person. Someone who demonstrates what happens when you refuse to quit, even when every signal says you should. His name was Robert. And he spent 23 years in a job he hated, not disliked. Hated. Every single day. He worked in middle management at a manufacturing company. The work was soul-crushing. The culture was toxic. His boss was a bully who took pleasure in humiliating people. The pay was decent, but not exceptional. There was nothing keeping him there except fear. Fear of starting over. Fear of uncertainty. Fear of what people would think. Fear of admitting that 23 years had been a mistake. So he stayed. Year after year. He watched younger colleagues come and go, some of them quitting to pursue dreams he could not even let himself have. He told himself they were irresponsible. He told himself he was being mature. He told himself that staying was strength, that it was not strength. It was paralysis dressed up as virtue. The cost accumulated invisibly at first, then acceleratingly. His health deteriorated. His marriage nearly collapsed under the weight of his constant stress and emotional unavailability. His children grew up with an absent father who was present in body, but not in spirit. His sense of self slowly eroded until he could not remember who he was outside of the job he hated. When Robert finally retired at 67, he was a shell of a person. He had no hobbies, no interests. No sense of purpose. No idea what to do with himself. He had spent his entire adult life enduring rather than living. And now he did not know how to live. Within 2 years of retirement, Robert was gone. Not to disease. Not to accident. Just gone, in the way that people who have been empty for too long sometimes go. He faded. He stopped engaging. He gave up, but not strategically. Tragically, his final years were marked by a profound absence. An absence of purpose. An absence of joy. An absence of the vitality that had once been present, even if suppressed, during his working years. It was as if the thing that had been keeping him alive, even while making him miserable. Robert's wife said something at his funeral that haunted everyone who heard it. He waited his whole life to live, she said. He kept saying someday. Someday he would do what he really wanted. Someday he would be happy. But someday never came. And now it never will. At his funeral, an old colleague said something that stuck with everyone who heard it. Robert spent his whole life being responsible. I just wish someone had told him that being responsible to yourself matters too. Robert's story is not meant to scare you. It is meant to illuminate the stakes. The cost of not quitting, of staying in the wrong place for the wrong reasons, is not just inconvenience or suboptimal outcomes. It can be everything. Your health, your relationships, yourself, your life. This is not hypothetical. This is what happens every day to people who believe that quitting is never the answer, who white-knuckle their way through decades of misery because someone once told them that winners never quit. Robert was not a winner. He was a casualty. A casualty of a philosophy that sounds inspiring but can be deadly. You do not have to be Robert. You have options he never let himself see. You have courage he never let himself access. You have the ability to read the signals, cut the chains, and walk towards something better. And speaking of walking towards something better, let me address something that might be lurking in the back of your mind. What about the people who depend on me? This is one of the most common objections to quitting. I have a family. I have employees. I have obligations. I cannot just walk away because other people are counting on me. This is a legitimate concern. You do have responsibilities to others. You cannot pretend you exist in a vacuum where your choices affect only yourself. But let me offer a reframe. What kind of you are those people getting? When you stay in something that is destroying you, you are not giving your family the best version of yourself. You are giving them the depleted, stressed, resentful, exhausted version. You are physically present, but emotionally absent. You are going through the motions while your inner light dims. Is that really serving them? Is that really meeting your obligations? When you stay in a job that is crushing your spirit, you are modeling something for your children. You are showing them that this is what adult life looks like. That misery is normal. That you should sacrifice your well-being on the altar of responsibility. Is that the lesson you want them to learn? When you stay in a business that is failing, you are not protecting your employees. You are prolonging their uncertainty. You are consuming resources that could be deployed more effectively elsewhere. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the people depending on you is to make the hard call that frees everyone to move on. I'm not saying your obligations to others are irrelevant. I am saying that your obligation to yourself is not in competition with them. A healthy you is better for everyone than a destroyed you. A functional you can provide more than a broken you. A thriving you has more to give than a surviving you. The strategic quitter does not abandon their responsibilities. They fulfill them more effectively by ensuring they have something left to give. Another objection I hear often is about timing. It is not the right time. And you know what? It might not be. There might genuinely be reasons to wait. Projects to complete. Transitions to manage. Financial cushions to build. The strategic quitter does not act impulsively. They plan, but here is what I have noticed. For some people, It is never the right time. There is always another reason to wait. Another obligation to fulfill first. Another box to check before they can move. If you have been saying it is not the right time for years, if the right time keeps receding into the future like a mirage in the desert, then you need to be honest with yourself. The timing objection has become an excuse. You are using it to avoid the discomfort of change. The right time is not some magical moment, when all conditions align perfectly. That moment will never come. The right time is when you have done reasonable planning and preparation. The right time is when the cost of staying exceeds the cost of leaving. The right time is when you have reached the limit of what is acceptable. For some of you listening right now, the right time is now, not a year from now. Not when the kids are older. Not when you have saved more. Not when the project is done. Now, because a year from now, there will be new reasons to wait. There will always be new reasons to wait. And meanwhile, your one precious life is ticking away, spent on something that does not deserve it. Let me talk about one more critical piece of strategic quitting. Handling the responses of others. When you quit something significant, you will face reactions. Some will be supportive. Many will not be. You will face surprise from people who thought you had it all figured out. You will face disappointment from people who were invested in your previous path. You will face judgment from people who think quitting is weakness. You will face concern from people who genuinely care but do not understand. You will face projection from people who wish they could quit but cannot, and who resent that you can. These reactions can be intense. They can make you doubt yourself. They can make you want to reverse course and go back to the familiar misery just to make the discomfort. Stop. Do not let them. Here is the truth about other people's reactions to your quit. They are about them, not about you. When someone is disappointed that you left a prestigious career, that is about their values, not yours. When someone judges you for walking away from a failing business, that is about their fear, not your failure. When someone cannot understand why you would leave something that looked good from the outside, that is about their limited perspective, not your limited judgment. You cannot control how others react. You can only control how you respond to their reactions. Be gracious, but not apologetic. You do not owe anyone an apology for making the right choice for your life. Be clear but not defensive. You do not need to justify yourself to people who are not living your life. Be compassionate, but not compliant. You can understand their concerns without letting those concerns override your wisdom. Some relationships will not survive your quit. Some people are only capable of relating to you in a specific role, and when you leave that role, they will not know how to relate to you anymore. This is painful but informative. It shows you which relationships were conditional and which were genuine. The relationships worth keeping will survive. The people who actually love you, not just the role you were playing, will adjust. They might be surprised. They might be confused. They might need time. But eventually, they will see you thriving on the other side. And they will understand. And some relationships will deepen through your quit. There is something about making a courageous choice that brings people closer. When you show someone your real self, including your real struggles and your real choices, it creates intimacy that was not possible when you were hiding behind a role. So what does this all add up to? You are not weak if you quit. You might be wise. You are not a failure if you walk away. You might be succeeding at a higher game. You are not betraying your investment if you stop investing in something that is not working. You might be honoring it by learning from it and moving on. The mythology of never giving up has kept you trapped. The people who peddled it meant well, probably, but they were wrong. Persistence is only a virtue when it is pointed in the right direction. Grit is only valuable when it is applied to something worth grinding for. You have the ability to read the exit signals. You have the ability to untangle your identity from your commitments. You have the ability to quit on your own terms while you are ahead, towards something better. You have the ability to grieve what you release without letting the grief pull you backward. You have the ability to build something beautiful in the cleared space. You have the ability to reframe your past, quits as experiments that led you here, and you have the ability to live a life of ongoing discernment, where you continuously prune and choose, where you hold your commitments lightly even as you pursue them fully, where you are never trapped because you always know you have the option to leave. Let me share with you what I call the Strategic Quitter's Manifesto, a set of principles to carry with you as you move forward. I recognize that persistence is only a virtue when directed at something worthy. I refuse to let sunk costs determine my future investments. Commit to seeing the opportunity costs of staying, not just the costs of leaving. I will read exit signals honestly, without letting fear distort my interpretation. I understand that my identity is not my commitments, and I can change what I do without losing who I am. I will quit towards something, not just away from something. I will time my exit strategically, preferring to leave while I am ahead rather than waiting until I am desperate. I will plan my transitions thoughtfully, bridging from what was to what will be. I will grieve what I release while still moving forward. I will build something worthy in the space I create. I will reframe my past quits as experiments that taught me, not failures that define me. I will practice ongoing discernment, continuously evaluating my commitments against my evolving values and vision. I will hold all commitments lightly, remembering that I am always free to choose. These principles will serve you if you let them. They will guide you through the decisions that lie ahead. They will help you distinguish between persistence that serves you and, you know what I feel, he said finally, relief every single day. Relief that I got out when I did. Relief that I trusted my gut. Relief that I did not let fear of what people would think keep me chained to something that was about to go bad. But more than relief, I feel gratitude. Gratitude that I had the courage to quit. Because quitting that company did not just save me from a collapse. It gave me my life back. It gave me time with my family that I was missing. It gave me the space to start something new, something that actually matters to me now. It gave me a second act that I would never have had if I had stayed. Everyone thinks the hard thing is staying. Staying is not hard. Staying is just inertia dressed up as virtue. The hard thing is leaving. The hard thing is trusting yourself enough to walk away from something that looks good on paper, because you know in your bones that it is not right anymore. That is the hard thing. And that is the thing I am most proud of. That is the thing you can be proud of too. The door you are afraid to close is blocking the one you are meant to walk through. Quit while you are ahead. Your future is waiting on the other side.